All right, we just got done with some radicals, some square root things, and we broke down radicals with perfect squares. We don't want the decimal for square root of 126 anymore. I know 121 is 11, so 11.1 something, I don't know. But we're going to break it down using perfect squares. So we need to find one that goes into 126. I think 9 goes in there, so let's see, 126 divided by 9 is 14. All right, so 9 times 14. And then the square root of 9 is 3. 3 root 14. And there are no more perfect squares in 14, so we're good. When we were solving problems like 2 here, when we were using the square root property, first you isolated the x squared. So here we'd have to get rid of the minus 4. X squared equals negative 4. And then once we got it down to x squared, we square rooted both sides. But we can't square root negative numbers. So what we said before was no solution, or no real solutions, or no real numbers. Luckily, we can dip into the complex or imaginary number system to square root those negative numbers. That's what we're doing today. Woohoo! So, I is going to equal the square root of negative 1. Wow. Which means I squared would come out to negative 1. That's more of tomorrow's thing. But today, when we're square rooting negatives, like when we're square rooting negative 4, the square root of regular 4 is 2. If we're square rooting negative, we're just going to make it 2i. Square root of negative 9 would be 3i. What? Square root of negative 100, square root of regular 100 is 10, so square root of negative 100 we're going to say is 10i. Wow. You're in for a real treat here. So, square rooting negative 2. Again, we're going to put our perfect stuff in the left, our leftovers in the right. Now, I see the negative. Cool. I'll take out a negative 1. It's negative 1 times 2. The square root of negative 1 we're saying is I today. There are no perfect squares in 2, so it's just I root 2. Number B I kind of gave away already. The square root of 4 is just 2. The square root of negative 4 we're going to say is 2i. But let's pretend like we're not there yet. Let's say we'll do it the book's way. And we're like, oh, that's negative 1 times 4. Square root of negative 1 is I. Square root of 4 is 2. I times 2, you make it 2i. Just put the perfect stuff in the left. If you got a negative, just put it in the left. So when we're thinking about negative 75, I'll put the negative over here. Now let's just pretend like it's regular 75. I know 25 goes in there. So I'm going to say that's negative 25 times positive 3. When I'm doing the square root of negative 25, that's going to be 5i root 3. Negative 3 times the square root of negative 16 we're saying is 4i. Now, luckily, you can multiply anything with anything. Negative 3 times 4i is just negative 12i. So I have 3 here that I would like you to actually try. So go ahead and pause the video here, check in with your answers, see how you did. This one's a little toughy. When you multiply by a third, you're dividing by 3. So this would be negative 1i root 7. Hey, how'd you do? 100%? I hope so. I certainly hope so. All right, let's solve some equations. X squared equals negative 81. We should probably square root both sides. Remember, when we square root, we include the plus or minus. And the square root of negative 81 we're going to say is 9i. So positive or negative 9i. Now, there's a step before we do that, or a 2. On b, you have to isolate the x squared first. So we're going to subtract the 75 from both sides. 3 times x squared equals negative 75. Then we have to divide the 3. X squared equals negative 25. And then we square root. And this was in the past where we would have said no solution or no real numbers. But now we can. Plus or minus square root of negative 25, we're going to say is 5i. And here we go. We'll subtract the 10. 3x squared equals negative 36. We'll divide the 3 there. X squared equals negative 12. And then here's where we're going to square root both sides. We got to include the plus or minus. A perfect square in negative 12 we're going to say is negative 4. It's negative 4 times 3. Square root of negative 4 we're saying is 2i. So plus or minus 2i root 3. That one was a toughie. I'll give you that. Let's see. I think I might have some for you to try. Oh, yeah. Give it a try. Pause it. Check back in when you're done. See how you did. Square root x equals plus or minus 6i. Here we're going to subtract the 48. X squared equals negative 48. Square root them. I know that 16 times 3 gives me 48. So x equals plus or minus 4i root 3. Over here we'll subtract the 25 first. 9x squared equals negative 25. We'll divide the 9. Why not? Let's get wild. X squared equals negative 25 ninths. And then remember, when you square root a fraction, you just square root each part. So plus or minus square root of negative 25, we're going to say is 5i. Square root of 9 is 3. So plus or minus 5i over 3. Whew. Wowza. And then pish posh. You're going to have a combination of real numbers, imaginary numbers. You know how usually if you had like 7 and 5x, you would write the 5x first. It'd be like 5x plus 7. When you have imaginary numbers, those actually hang out at the end. So anything with an I hangs out at the end here. We are going to have to solve these either by completing the square or the quadratic formula. We're going to complete the square here. So we're solving it. We're looking for zeros, solutions. So this f of x, we're going to make 0. And actually, I'm going to write the equals 0 on the other side here. Now remember, when we're solving this by completing the square, we just put the x squareds and the x's on one side. To get rid of that 5 and send it to the other side, you would subtract it. So we're going to complete the square here. And remember, to do that, we take our b, which is negative 2 here. We always divide by 2, and then we square it. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. So the left side would factor to x minus 1 squared. The right side comes out to negative 4. Now we square root both sides. X minus 1 equals, we have to say plus or minus, square root of negative 4 we say is 2i. And then there's just one step. We just have to get rid of this minus 1 over here. So we'll add 1. And we're going to put it in front of the plus or minus there. So we'll have x equals 1 plus or minus 2i. And again, that shows two solutions. That shows 1 plus 2i is a solution, and 1 minus 2i is a solution. So let's try the same thing over here. We'll say x squared plus 10x. You know we're sending the 35 to the other side, so we'll say plus something equals negative 35 plus something. And we're going to complete the square again. We're going to take half of b, and then we'll square it. Half of 10 is 5. Squared would be 25. So the factor on the left side would be x plus 5 squared. On the right side, negative 35 plus 25 is negative 10. We'll square root both sides. X plus 5 equals plus or minus, no. 10 is not a perfect square, and there are no perfect squares in it. However, we do have to take out the negative sign, so we're going to kick out an I. We're going to say that's I root 10. All there is left to do now is subtract the 5. So we'll have x equals negative 5 plus or minus I root 10. I have two more that I would like you to try on the next slide. And again, I would recommend pausing it, trying it, see how you do, and check your answers with what I got over here, because I'm going to go over them even quicker. Let's see, x squared plus 4x plus blank. We would be subtracting the 13 to the other side. Half of b, 4 over 2 squared. 2 squared is 4. Left side would factor to x plus 2 squared. Right side is negative 9. Square root them. X plus 2 equals plus or minus 3i. And then we just subtract the 2 over there. X equals negative 2 plus or minus 3i. Yay! We did it! We're so smart! Alright. X squared minus 8x plus blank equals negative 18 plus blank. Cut our b in half, and then we'll square it. Negative 4 squared is 16. So that would factor to x minus 4 squared. The right side comes out to negative 2. Now, there's no perfect squares in 2, but we do have to take out the I. Plus or minus I root 2. And then we'll just add the 4 to the other side. Guys, we did it, man! We did it!